We're going to start with the front intake. We are eventually going to build a twin tube because we're probably going to need to.
So parts and pieces, front inlet, low level, LL strainer. Off of the other side, the driver's side, we'll call it, we're not doing elbows. So we're going to have to suction those from here, out and across to another low level strainer here. Right, that's the first build out. The next step is when pond 2 gets dropped in the water, we're going to put suction 2 more low level strainers or jet siphons, whichever we have. We have a little bit of both, and 2 tubes. We'll go from 2 to 1. At the same time, we're going to use that as the transfer engine as well.
Yeah, and I think what I think would be beneficial is do it as a single lane here, and then show if the engine had backed in the driveway. And then we can have we can have the white engine nose up and be the transfer engine. Cool. So we can show, okay, this engine's pumping all the way to the fire scene. This engine there is my motive engine.
Right on. So the initial single lane operation, we want to try to get 2 tubes in the water. They're going to transfer water from tank 2 to tank 1. Off of this initially, when we do this, there's going to be a little manifold or a gated Y at the driver operator's position. Immediately, we need to get 1 3/4 hose lines to these jets to act as the motive, okay? As that's being built out, as more resources come to the fire scene, we're going to take most likely a 24-foot extension ladder, and we're going to bridge from tank 3 right here to tank 1, right? So there's our little ladder bridge. We'll start assembling suction hose. The suction hose can stop right here at the top. We don't have to dive it into the water. We want that to stay proud of the tank edge. And then that 20-some feet of hose, twins. Initially, we'll get 1, right? But ultimately, we want to have twins with 2 more low-level strainers or jet siphons there, and an additional set of hand lines to come from that location out to the 2 jets on tank 3 on their transfer jets. Now, I have a TFT water thief with a gated Y. So on 1 2.5-inch outlet at the driver's position, we will be able to run all 4 of those lines, okay? We can also run it here, but we're going to assuming that our tankers would be coming past here, so we really don't want to put transfer lines out in the roadway. Everybody got that so far? All right? So one of the things that we can film, even though our driver operator is drafting and supplying water to the fire ground, we can have a secondary firefighter that his role is just to move those jets or continually have conversation. There's other options. Sometimes people will take a section of 3-inch or 2.5 out to here and put that manifold on the ground if you want to do that way. Either way, and then that transfer person can visualize what's going on. That might actually be the better way to do it with a short pony section.
What do you have plumbed on the front bumper? Is it a 2.5-inch discharge on 57? 57?
Yeah, 2.5.
Okay.
So that's the basic setup. That's what's going on. I wasn't at the site, but apparently there's enough room.
There, yeah, it's a wide street, a lot wider than what we were dealing with yesterday.
Yeah, we'll have to leave. I mean, it's industry, so we'll have to leave 1 lane where they come.
Probably the most critical thing, and before we wet any of these tanks, you guys have done this, we're just making sure everybody's on the same page. This line has to be almost as straight as an arrow. Y'all know that when you're out there, right? If one tank is proud of the setup by 6 inches, 8 inches, right? That could be, that'll just change the game because this guy gets up, he can't get past it. Now he's out and it shoots too far to get to the next one. So it's really critical when we're setting these dump sites up that all those tanks are in a line as best as possible, okay? Regardless of which way they're coming from. Depending on the route of travel, if they're coming in this direction, one of the cool things about that, if you have a tanker, and we have a lot of these up north that only have rear dumps, that tanker can come past, pull in and back into slot 3. So at least we're utilizing that truck and not just taking them out of rotation. The second part of this is we're also going to show that there's another engine, or the primary attack engine is now backed into the driveway or a space. Same configuration, right? Front inlet, driver's side inlet into there. The big difference is now the secondary engine, which will be 1 or...
So yeah, yes.
Right? They're going to pull up out of the same primary tank. Everything needs to orient around tank 1 because that's our primary drafting tank. That's the tank that's most likely always going to have the water, or should always have the water in it. The second engine can also put a hard tube in there, probably set up for a twin tube drift. You might not need that capacity, but I'm a creature of habit. I build it the same way all the time. So but don't starve the dump site transfer as a suction tube just because you want to do a twin tube, right? You're only going to motive flow, and we'll round up 200 gallons per jet siphon. 2 times 4 siphons is 800. We can still get that through a front inlet on the rig, so it's not that big of a deal. But as I've been on deals where we had 5 tanks down, we're moving a lot of water. So don't take 3 sections of hard tube if we don't have them. Does that make sense, everybody? So then what will happen is this will be our primary fire attack, feeding the engine, feeding 12 with the TFT monitor on it. And this other engine, all that person will do now is just do the transferring. So what the reason for that, if you're not aware, every jet siphon I use, if this is my primary attack and this guy's not in place yet, primary attack is drafting. Our fire flow needs to be 1,000 gallons a minute, right? That 1250 pumper, we were doing, what, 15-ish, right? So if I get to that 15, well, I want to run 4 jet siphons. I'm maxing out my pump's capacity because some of the energy that I could be pumping to the fire scene is being utilized just to move water from pond to pond. So if I can isolate that role of jet siphons away from the fire attack engine or the dump site engine, that's all that guy has to worry about now is just using. So that 4 to 500 gallons of motive water is transferred to this guy's responsibility, and fire attack just got all that water from fires.
Let me ask one question.
Yeah.
Just for apparatus and to get some B-roll for fill site. You mentioned in your discussion on your video using a fire hydrant for fill site, right?
We did.
Briefly.
Yeah, it was just to mention that's an opportunity.
So we're going to have to refill the tanker a couple times. There's a hydrant down there at the end of the street. Maybe we should take 12, have it pump the hydrant and set up a small fill site there just to get that B-roll, and then just use 57 and engine 1 to do the dump site stuff, and the fire scene that they're pumping will be a couple blitz fires or something. Yeah. Does that work?
Yeah, that we were just getting more footage.
More footage, and yeah.
Nobody here on poly tubes for transfer.
None. I haven't seen those. I've seen them in East Tennessee once.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, West Tennessee.
When you're dropping ponds, again, it's a local thing. I like to leave at least 24 inches to 30 inches between ponds. For me, that's an escape route. If I happen to get out here as the dump site officer, especially at night, I have 2 places I can bail.
Let's make sure we film that.
Yeah. And actually somebody in a vest that could step into that void space will capture that image, right? Too many times I'll see departments put those tanks right up against each other and there's nowhere to go. And I've seen guys almost get crushed against the tank because they're hanging out there, and the last thing you want to do is jump in water, especially when it's 25 degrees outside, right? So leave that little gap. The biggest dude in your department, make it that gap. So if it's 24, if it's James, it needs to be about 8. But other than that, right? Oh, hi. But yeah, 24 to 30 inches is a good marker. Taylor brought up the holly tube. Anybody know what a holly tube is? It's basically a piece of aluminum tubing, 5 feet long, with an integral jet, and it hangs on the side. So there's one pond, there's your other pond. This piece of pipe has a cut on the bottom, and it's just an open tube, and then the jet is inside there like that. So when I pressurize it, it's basically doing the same thing we're going to do with suction hose, and it just chugs that water over. The problem with that is the tanks have to be close because you can't get enough velocity to truly get it over there. So if we're not doing that, keep that. And that's just a rule of thumb going forward for rural water ops. Keep that spacing as a safety zone between them. Anything else you want to?
Nope. Who do you have on engine 1? Or are you going to break them up?
Brandon and I and Kyle and then
Okay.
got Mikhail and Wyatt on a pickup truck, and the rights are going some.
Okay.
Does everybody have webbing, pieces of rope, bungee straps, something?
Yeah.
Something that we can secure, right? Those pieces 6-inch tube from the pond to the receiving pond, we do want to tie them down. It's good practice. When they're on the ladder, it's not that big of a deal, but if you have a cinch strap or a ratchet strap, you can capture both of them on the ladder at the same time. So think about what y'all have in your gear as far as a chunk of webbing or whatever, and we'll use that.
That's that cover.
Hey, buddy.
Mustache again.